from TurnKey Technologies. I think we're ready to get started here. First of all, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend some time with us today. Today we're going to discuss about optimizing your sales order process. But throughout the presentation, also think about other business processes, because what we'll be going through from a generic standpoint could be used in other processes throughout your organization. But obviously we'll be focusing on the sales order process today. Our hope is that you'll gain some valuable insights through the discussions today, the presentations, about optimizing those processes through a disciplined integration process using standard industry tools. Some of our customers have found a long-term ROI, repeatable revenue results through utilizing this process. In particular, one showed a 10% improvement in profit margins over a very short 3-month period. So it does work, and we do have some customers that show that. So thank you again, and I'm going to be the moderator today, and just going to start the agenda here, and then I'll turn it over to our guest speakers in a few minutes. So just kind of following the flow of the agenda. Obviously, welcome, and we'll be introducing the speakers in just a second here. We'll be talking about why sales order process optimization and what is it. Throughout this discussion presentation, we ask you that you think about your own processes and discover and identify those that could utilize this process and these tools. We'll introduce our partner, Scribes software, and talk a little bit about the tools that are used within this process. And then from a Q&A standpoint, we'll also have availability time in between sections, but also at the end of the presentation to answer any of your questions. Logistically, if you could put your questions in the chat area, we can take those and then answer them as we go along. So to start out a little bit, for those of you who don't know TurnKey Technologies, we are a Microsoft Dynamics partner. Obviously, you can see our product set, ERP using GP, CRM, AX, and then we're also a hosting provider. We provide services and software, but really what our focus is customer experience. So that goes along with our philosophy, and that's why we've been successful for over 20 years. From a standpoint of internally where we're at, we're in St. Louis, Missouri, and some of the things that we have here at our headquarters is a hands-on lab training center, which is available to customers and prospects, along with a certified trainer that we have on staff. We provide our own quarterly user groups for CRM and GP, ERP customers as well. And we also still participate in the Microsoft user groups, which is really part of the ecosystem, so we do both. We focus a lot on communications with our customers. One of the ways we do that is through quarterly newsletters, so it's important for us to stay in touch with our customers. So TurnKey has been around for 20+ years. Chris Garadini is our founder and still strategically directs our company and provides insight to the industry as well as products moving forward. We have 40+ Dynamics professionals over 8 states that are available to our customers and our prospects. One of the neat things here at TurnKey is because of all the experience that we have that's focused on business processes, is that we can definitely show a lower implementation cost with on-time deployment. It's because of our experience, because of our focus on Microsoft Dynamics products. As we talk about sales order processing, we've been able to provide a 20 to 25% increase in productivity, and a lot of that is really just at the front end of the quoting and proposal phase of it. So that's just one part of this entire process. So you can imagine what productivity gains that you can get throughout the process. We're proud of our credentials, our awards. We have plaques all around our office, and hopefully someday you can come and visit us here, and you'll get to see those. But a lot of companies put their awards out, but really, if you're not familiar with Microsoft and the requirements of getting those certificates and the certifications and those awards, it's a pretty rigorous process. I'm actually going through some of it myself with some certifications, and we all do it here. So it really makes it more valuable to our customers that we have that experience. So why sales order process optimization? So as I was thinking about this slide, I basically came up and said, well, we got to start somewhere, and why not start at the front end? Makes perfect sense. Maybe in your business, your challenge is in the middle of your process, or maybe at the end of it in the back office, and it makes more sense to start there. But for the presence today of talking about this integration and optimization of business processes, we just thought I would start there. I am a salesperson, so this makes perfect sense to me. I don't necessarily like that number there, about 75% of the time of non-selling activities, but we're really working hard here with our own CRM implementation and integration to reduce those non-selling activities so that I can be in front of prospects and customers. So the benefits, everybody always wants, okay, so we talk about the process and you know, what you can get out of it, but really when it comes down to it is really what's the benefits that you can gain. So from a sales perspective, again, it's the front part of the process. It's about closing deals faster. And the way you do that is by knowing who your prospects are, knowing who the industries to go after are, knowing what your own internal experiences and knowledge is so that you can really focus, laser focus on that sales piece and not worry about the day-to-day entry. You know, working with strategic partners, again, freeing up your time with the sales representatives and focusing on that is really the benefits that you gain here. Again, we talked about just briefly about other processes in it. At the tail end of the sales order process, you've got invoicing, and I know, you know, some of our customers have told us that they have issues at that end of it, that the information from the quote and the proposals don't necessarily get to the invoice process. So there's benefits at the tail end of this process as well. So just keep that in mind. It's not all just centered on salespeople. So that's my quick spiel on TurnKey, who we are, where we've been. With that said, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. First of all, I've got Rokas Varanavicius, affectionately known as Rokas V, so I won't be pronouncing his name again today. He's our senior CRM lead at TurnKey Technologies. He's got over 10 years of experience with Dynamics CRM. Rokas will be discussing the what, why, and how of process optimization and the challenges that you face that he's seen in his experiences with customers and prospects. He'll take you through a simple integration approach and then contrast that to a more complex approach at the tail end. After that, we're going to hand it off to Tom Brown. Tom is with our partner Scribes Software and Scribe Tools. He'll be talking about that and how intricate that is in this whole process and what the benefit of using standard tools within this process to integrate between your ERP and your CRM system. He'll talk about the scalability and the flexibility of those tools to integrate with disparate systems. This is just a transition slide, and I was working on trying to figure out a better title for this, but then when I thought about it, it's all about working smarter, and we all need to do that. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Rokas, and he'll start that part of the presentation. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Richard. So the first thing I would like to address is, let's define what is a process optimization. By dictionary definition, it is a discipline of adjusting a process so that as to optimize some specified set of parameters, and that's a key specified set of parameters without violating some constraints. So obviously, the goals for process optimization typically will be minimizing the cost, maximizing throughput, adding efficiency, making people happier on both sides, your end users and your customers. And I think the other thing about process optimization is that if we have a process that is measurable, then we can actually start making a decision. We can use tools that we have to make certain decisions, business decisions, whether that means better pricing, better efficiencies, and turning back to the customers and proposals and so forth. However, what we do see on a day-to-day basis is that the manual processes typically will break your constraints. So obviously, it's easier to adjust the parameters when you have a manual process that is not really any way documented or formal, because somebody calls me up, I need to go around and do some things outside of the process. I can do it and nobody will know, so it's kind of really hard to figure out what the process looks like and so forth. So before we can really start adjusting the parameters and tweaking the process and figuring out what we can optimize, what are the constraints, and how we can adjust those, we really need to look to see, well, what potential challenges we are actually changing. I mean, what kind of challenges we potentially have in our organizations with regards to optimization. So as you see from this slide, we actually see that gathering the data from business processes is one of the key challenges before you actually even start optimizing the process. It is very hard to figure out some kind of quantitative details on how we're going to measure the process, what is working, what is not working, when you don't really have any data to back it up. Another thing is disjointed technology pieces, disjointed teams, policies, really throws a big wrench in the quote-to-order cycle. I'm sure you guys are familiar that salespeople will have one set of communications. Then when the orders actually turn over to a fulfillment team, especially if there are custom orders, special notes, other things like that, a lot of things are lost in translation. So really not having that one jointed process at a very basic level is really a challenge for any kind of process optimization discussions. And then the next thing is that if you want to potentially do the processes manually and then track some kind of data outside of the process for your reporting or for your optimization efforts, typically that is not feasible to request people to track any kind of data outside of day-to-day process. So in summary, it is hard to make any kind of decisions without having the data that supports the decision-making process. So with that said, what can we do? Well, unfortunately, the evil is in the detail. So a lot of times people are expecting to have some kind of silver bullet approach where we say if you do this one step or you implement this technology, you install this software, everything will be solved. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So the solution really requires an effective evaluation and multiple steps. So what do we mean by that is that an organization has to make a decision to actually take the following steps. The first step is identify the process constraints and opportunities to improve. So as I said, it's kind of hard to identify the process constraints if the process doesn't exist, it's not clearly defined, and so forth. So the next step is to actually decide how to exploit certain constraints. So once again, this is pretty open-ended decision point, but the next step is setting a scope and priorities. This is one of the key steps in the whole process and the whole philosophy and how we approach this, because as I said, we can take a very simple approach and just start linking the things together, or we can dive into very detailed end-to-end process that involves complete business overhaul. But the question is, what is the reality? I mean, can we dedicate certain resources, certain time, certain technology that we need, even budgetary resources to actually achieve all those objectives? And even if we do that, can we actually be successful with big bang theory? So really, I mean, looking and evaluating the opportunities, the constraints we're trying to work with, setting the scope around those, and setting the priorities around those really helps with overall process optimization. So obviously, once we identify the scope, identify where the issues are, we need to actually go and implement the system, test it, run through it, evaluate the results that we're getting out of the system, and then potentially repeat the same process again. Once we repeat the process, you will actually notice that sometimes you will have certain policies, whether those are formal policies, some not formal policies that might be actually presenting certain additional constraints for your new process. So one of the steps in overall process optimization is to look for those policies, to look for those cultural elements within your organization, and actually start addressing those. Try to eliminate the things that are there just because they were there for 20 years and might be not applicable. Start addressing the issues with potential user acceptance, user adoption. Some users who potentially might be pushing back and so forth. So really those are the key elements. And as I said, the key message in here from this slide is that there's no really easy way to address the process optimization. There's no one-step approach. Organization has to be engaged in the process, and then that is an ongoing process. So with that said, let's look at a couple examples of what kind of process optimization we can be potentially looking at. So from the sales process perspective, here's an example of process optimization that was done and implemented in the customer side for a company who actually provides services in fixing gadgets. So the first thing that was done in here is actually put a process together in place that is joined. So obviously we're talking about process optimization, but as I mentioned, one of the key challenges for the process optimization is to have a process in place to start with. So what we did in here is we put a website integration where a customer can go in and look at what does it cost for certain gadgets to be fixed. Once the customer identifies what gadget they have and what things they might want to do for that particular gadget that they are interested in fixing, they potentially go in and place order on a website. So now on the first point in here, we'll just kind of walk through this entire process, is a website injects an order straight into the CRM. So the customer representative actually sits or actually is aware of an order. They can see the details, they can see the customer information, they can see when they need to expect that order to be arriving. As you see, the next step in the process was once the order actually is, once the gadget is received and arrives, a representative actually will review the particular gadget, review the device, review the work, document additional details, contact the customer if needed, and track everything in one system. Then after that, the repairs would happen, the changes would happen, everything is communicated to the customer throughout the process, the testing is completed, and then the technicians or the representatives actually will enter the parts, enter the services, additional services rendered for that particular gadget, and the system actually will price out the services. The customer will be contacted for collecting the payment, so everything happens automatically. Customer paid, the device is sent out to the customer, an order within the system with additional notes and so forth is closed out within a CRM system in this case, and then when that happens, the system is automatically pushing the data back into an ERP system for the invoicing and adjusting inventory and so forth. Once the ERP system is updated, a process automatically pushes the data back to the customer tables within the CRM for the sales history, account receivable history, and so forth, and any kind of data management from product perspective, pricing perspective, inventory availability, payment terms, and all that stuff, everything is maintained in ERP system. So the point in here that the customer can go and do the self-service, and they get the same pricing, they get the same list of details. If anything that is special about this order is documented within order placement on the self-service website, that information is flowing throughout the entire process available to the customer reps. And if there are any maintenance changes, like price changes, customer details changes, shipping method terms, and anything else like that, tax table changes, all of those details are managed in the ERP system, and everything flows back to the CRM system where it's actually used by different representatives. So the key in here, the set of benefits in here that the process optimization really happens by simply simplifying and enjoying the process to, first of all, start looking to see what is working and what is not working. Then the next step for this particular customer is actually start looking how we can shave off some navigation time and some other things like that from a customer representative perspective, where we change the layout, change the forms that certain roles see and so forth, so that the whole process of working with the data, working with devices can be smoother. The next thing that was introduced actually for this particular customer and this particular implementation was we started adding SLAs and started actually flagging certain data elements that representative needs to pay attention to as a higher priority. And then we started adding additional features like automatically sending a receipt to the customer, sending a notification to the customer that the order is completed and ready for payment, so the customer can actually do the self-service payment instead of representative calling and so forth. So as you see, I mean, the first step was to link the process together so we actually have something that passes the data along in an integrated way. And then we start looking at what are the major constraints, and we start adjusting those constraints one at a time to actually see what kind of process gains we are getting. So with that said, if we look at the next slide in here, this is a quick summary of pretty much what are the integration objects that were actually used in this particular implementation. So as you see, we have a customer information. Customer can come in as a prospect. Customer comes in as an existing customer. And when that information is updated in one system, it automatically flows back into ERP for the billing details. If an order is created and line items are changed, pricing changed, discounts provided, taxes calculated, all that information flows back into ERP system. And as I was mentioning, from a product management perspective, product catalog, pricing, price list changes, all of those details are maintained within an ERP system, and everything flows back into the CRM. So we could talk about optimizing the salesperson's experience, minimizing the time, enhancing the overall customer experience. I mean, having that data that is automatically shared between the systems and is not something that a salesperson or an accounting has to go back and chase and make sure everything is up to date and everything is synced and everything, I mean, and then everybody in the team are working from the same list from a pricing perspective, same list of products, everybody's getting the same quotes and services and so forth. I mean, that's really where a lot of gains from a process perspective are realized. So if we look at the example, this is a CRM form, this is a quote, and as you see right here, the area that is highlighted is we have a prospect record, we are creating a quote. Only thing a salesperson has to do is go and select a certain set of products or even groups of the products, add those to the quote, and everything is automatically calculated. So from benefit perspective, having one source of the master data really is huge, because we don't want salespeople to go and mess with the margins, mess with the cost, mess with a lot of different elements that potentially might be part of the business decision data that we need to actually figure out if we're competitive, not competitive, why we're selling certain products and not selling another set of products. So from the customer perspective, if a customer has certain agreements in place for certain type of pricing that is available for them, if we actually place an order correctly up front or we quote them correct price up front, that means down the line we don't have to go back and work with accounting to actually receive the customer complaint about the wrong pricing and then work through issuing credit adjustments and other things like that. So once again, that saves a lot of time from back and forth perspective between the accounting and sales working together. And then the salespeople can actually rely on accounting and business management to actually make decisions on how the things are priced, what are the customer pricing levels and so forth. Then the salespeople can work much more confident in this system. They can produce quotes, they can give the customer the details that the customer is asking without waiting for somebody else. And then we see a lot of times, you know, business have cycles at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year. If accounting involvement is needed in any kind of sales process, typically that slows down the sales process. So having a optimized processes in place that actually integrates the data, that can eliminate any kind of wait time from our overall quoting process, that's a huge gain. Another thing, you know, simple things like the customer might already have shipping addresses, billing addresses, and all those details populated. So if you look at the lower side of the screen in here, I mean, if we already have that information from a customer previous purchases and previous history, why to actually ask for it again? If we're going to just go back, select it, update that right here, and then an order can be placed. So that gets back dramatically on the time. So the other example too is, you know, if you actually have a very custom pricing matrix, if you have a lot of custom processes that are in place in your organization. We have implemented the systems where we actually allowed organizations to do the pricing, do the complex calculations and math and all the stuff in their current Excel-based price sheets, and then actually upload certain elements of those price sheets straight into the CRM for accounting purposes. And when I say upload those into the CRM, the things that we have done in the past were we actually would upload certain categories for the cost, so we can actually track the cost of certain services, and we actually can upload certain categories for the high-level prices in certain categories. I mean, maybe we'll have the labor cost that is uploaded in here. Maybe we'll have the labor price. Maybe we can actually upload the cost of goods sold, or maybe we'll have the price of the material. So the point is that you don't have to go back into the system and manually add the product one by one. If your process dictates some more advanced, very custom kind of quoting requirements, we can potentially build a system or look into the solution where you can actually upload that information in here, but then when everything flows back to the accounting, account receivables, accounts, different general ledger accounts and everything else can be updated appropriately if that particular quote is won, if that particular order is placed, and so forth. So that way, the front end and the back end is always talking, and there's not a need to go back and forth and trying to figure out how to actually manually find those Excel documents, manually find the details to actually populate the data in the accounting side. So with that said, obviously, some processes can be simple. Some processes can be much more complex. So up to this point, we've been kind of looking and talking about a more or less simpler version of the process optimization. We're talking about how we can take a quote and integrate some of the key data elements for a quote to automatically be converted to an order and potentially fulfilled. But reality is that there are a lot of other details within different processes that potentially can greatly benefit the process optimization. So if we have a solution and if we have the set of processes that are already working together, so if we have a process that has a quote and then an order and then order fulfillment happening in place, typically we do see that the areas for improvement will be things like, shipping method, payment terms, tax details, any kind of sales history, account receivable statuses. All those kind of things become the next level of optimization opportunities, because what we find is certain customers have certain shipping method as a default preferences for them. Certain customers will have certain payment terms set. Tax schedules might be complex and so forth. And then typically throughout the typical sales process that has manual quoting, all of these seemingly minor elements will have a huge impact on how the quote is put together, what kind of variances you have in the quote, and so forth. So when you think about people actually going and producing the quote, they have to go and figure out how we're going to ship it, what is the shipping cost for that particular customer for that particular shipping method, and so forth. Are we including taxes? What taxes are we including, and so forth. So if we can actually build a process, build a system, or look into the system that can potentially optimize those pieces, so we can take any kind of guesswork away from the salesperson, and then put those details to be set on accounting, on ERP, or business management perspective, then we can actually streamline the process. The other things to think about too from the optimization perspective is if I'm a salesperson and I place an order, the customer potentially will call me back and say, hey, what is going on with the order? So looking at the things like purchase orders and purchase orders products, status of the purchase orders is a key also to the process optimization, because that potentially can allow an ERP system to do what the ERP system needs to do and actually push that information back into a system that is used by a salesperson, so then a salesperson can be actually effective and efficient in communicating with the customer, and actually maybe even being proactive communicating with the customer to actually trying to enhance the customer experience. Because now that salesperson actually can go back to the order, the salesperson can go and actually look at where that particular order stands and look at what kind of updates we have in that order and actually be proactive and send that information to the customer and say, hey, I know that we took an order from you. I communicated to you that we're pushing something to be drop shipped and will be fulfilled later. next week, this week, and so forth. I just want to let you know that we are actually shipping this information out, or here's the tracking number of the shipping details that we're just sending out to you. If you have any additional questions, let us know. Same thing goes back for the invoicing. You know, if the customer invoices are created, the salespeople, the organization is actually working outside of the ERP can actually have visibility to those details. And then we actually see a lot of success when we start thinking about concept of the sales history. You know, having that information available for the salesperson, for the marketing, is valuable. And we will look at a couple of examples, and then I will talk to a couple of those examples here in the next few minutes. But the idea in here is that we can take the data that we already have available in the ERP system, massage it, package it together, and expose the data to actually better define the customer, the relationship, and potentially set some flags that a salesperson can potentially pick it up and run with, and then take some action. So as you see, I mean, the opportunities to improve a process are really huge, but doesn't really need to mean doesn't really mean that a particular process has to be completely rebuilt, completely revamped, because we can actually look at some of the things that are really technical, that are detailed, and we can actually look to see how we can take advantage of some of the things we're already doing in our system. We're doing somewhere in an organization, or somebody's doing that, actually define the process, define how they are supposed to be done, and actually potentially look at integration as a way to make everybody's life easier by just pulling those pieces into different systems. So with that said, I would like to take a look at a couple of examples in here. So once again, this is a screenshot of a customer record in the CRM system that actually has done an integration with an ERP. And in this particular case, as you see in here on the top, we are exposing a account receivables data. So we show the current balance, we show the past due balance, we show past due 60 days, 90 days, and so forth. We show the terms. Well, obviously that's a nice data to have, but how is that related to potentially optimizing the process, or even making the customer experience better, or making the sales experience better, or making the salesman a better salesperson who potentially can serve the customer better? Well, simple things can be meaningful. If I look at a account receivable balance, maybe I can be proactive as a salesperson, actually reach out to the customer, see if anything is wrong. Did we deliver a service that was not to the customer's expectation? Are there some issues? Is there just an oversight? Or is there something that we can address with this particular customer that potentially can solve the customer's issue, can put our organization in the highest standard from a customer perspective, and actually potentially save the customer opposed to lose the customer? The other thing is, in the middle of the screen in here, we're looking at an example of how we can take some of the data that already happen to be in the ERP system, massage it, analyze it, and actually expose the summary details in here. So what we're looking at here, C1, C2, C3, these are really different categories of the sales. So maybe we're selling the services, maybe we're selling the products, maybe we're selling some additional warranty items or something else like that. This right here can quickly show you what the customer is buying, and look, and then can even expose a profitability details in here. So we can actually look to see if this customer is profitable, not profitable, and so forth. So therefore, if we're making a new quote, if we're giving some new, if we're placing new orders for the customer and so forth, maybe we can actually look to see if we have a competitive advantage by moving the margins back a little bit if we know that we're competing with certain competitors in our industry. The other thing to look at is purchasing trends. The last piece on this particular screenshot. So we can think about a lot of different ways how to be proactive. Some things that we see our customers benefit from are there are seasonal purchasing trends for certain set of customers. So if we as a sales organization can actually take a look at what our customers are buying, or what particular customers are buying, and actually see when they are buying, then maybe we can actually be proactive in issuing some quotes, issuing some orders to those customers, and saying, we know that July will be a busy time for you. How can we help you to make sure that you guys are ready for your busy time? Can we actually maybe talk in June, and last July you placed order for this many items, these are purchases purchases that you guys did throughout that period. Can we actually talk about reviewing the quote right now while we're still in June? So therefore, we are ready for your busy season, and you actually have the stock and items and everything that you need in time. The other thing to also look in here is look at the trends. So from a sales perspective and being effective and efficient and more profitable, can we look at the trends? And as you see right here, I mean, this information right here displays month-over-month, year-over-year sales for a particular customer. We can see that this particular customer is trending down. So once again, if we have a margin, we see the customer is trending down. Here is the tool that we potentially can look at to see if we can actually optimize our sales process and quoting process by maybe actually introducing some kind of discounts for certain customers, so maybe putting some special pricing for customers. So therefore, we can actually just change one or two parameters for a certain set of customers without breaking the constraints of how the system works, and actually see if we can actually see the uptrend on certain purchases for the particular customer. So with that said, next, I would like to take a look at even more complex process. So unfortunately, the truth is that the evil is in the details. And then the reality of the situation is that we cannot really say that any process is simple. I mean, we hear that over and over and over from different customers when we engage at the beginning that their process is simple. Reality is it's not. I mean, we might be thinking that a lot of organizations just have very simple paper-based manual processes. Therefore, you know, looking in the greater details is really a waste of time. But the reality is, if we look at this graph and kind of break it down, most organizations will have the following components within their end-to-end process. Number one on the diagram in here is lead stage. So obviously, from lead stage, we have sales and marketing and other individuals within the organization engaged. Obviously, they gather certain information, they gather certain preferences, and so forth, and then we'll qualify that lead. So obviously, any details that we capture at the lead stage probably would benefit to be moved over to the opportunity stage. Now, in the opportunity stage, we actually have different steps within that stage where we engage with the customer, we provide a quote, we get acceptance of the quote, and so forth. Once again, you know, that stage alone is can be very complex because we already talked about pricing optimization. So if we can take some of the steps out of that busy, complex work and actually focus on streamlining those simple steps and focus on enhancing the more complex steps, then we're already having a gain in a throughput and efficiencies and in an overall process improvement. Obviously, document sharing is one of the other requirements for a lot of organizations where, in addition to just notes and requests on how the quotes and orders are taking, some organizations will actually have certain examples of documents, collateral, and some other things like that, and usually a lot of those details are lost in the email. So once again, having a place where we keep all that information in one place, it's key. And obviously, if we go to step 3 in here, then we can talk about fulfillment from an order perspective. So anything that happens in step 1 and step 2, and then it goes to step 3, now has to be handed off to somebody who actually has to fulfill order, create an invoice, create a shipping details, notify the customer, and so forth. So once again, all of those pieces working together, it's a huge improvement, even if it's very simple at the front, and then going back and actually adding some additional complexity. Now, if we look at the step number 4, maintenance stage for the customer, understanding the customer financial details, account receivables, orders placed, summary of the products they purchase, and so forth, really adds a huge value to organizations as we keep talking about the overall customer-focused enterprise. And obviously, if we know who the customers are, if we know what they're purchasing, if we know the purchasing trends, number 5, why not use that information in outreach activities, in efforts to actually get engaged with the customer before they ping us or before they actually say that we have a need. You know, potentially we can reach out to the customer, as I said, and say, we understand that in a particular industry you have a busy season. Let's talk about your purchasing needs and then some other activities up front, opposed to waiting till it's busy and everybody's trying to get orders in at the last minute. Therefore, that minimizes our ability as a sales organization to potentially serve those customers better. So with that said, I mean, we can We can also think about a couple additional examples where organizations actually gained a lot by just simply linking the lead process and opportunity process together. I mean, we talked about integration throughout this presentation, but the reality is we don't have to be focused on integration and adding new technology and doing things, because we actually can look at some of these process components in here that are pretty straightforward and simple, and working with your people within your organization to make sure that the marketing and the sales are working together from a lead stage perspective, as an example, where if they go in and they qualify the lead, they know what they need to do to actually hand it off to the opportunity, so therefore that the customer can be contacted quicker by the sales organization, opposed to sending out a bunch of emails and then losing that valuable time. So as a last piece, and closing, I would like to once again mention that unfortunately there is no simple solution in solving the business process optimization challenges. The reality is that we need to take approach of crawling, walking, and then running. So if we need to actually build a process, first of all, that is a simple process that is working together, that is stitched together end to end, that's probably the first step. Then we actually need to find some success within those simple process steps, then evaluate the data that we gather from those process steps, and then actually look to see what else we can do to actually enhance that process and add additional opportunities to improve. So as you see, gathering the data, analyzing the data is really the key element in here from overall process optimization. But as the process goes, I guess the very key elements are consistency and repeatability. Whatever you do, however you do it, if you want to optimize any kind of process or have a process in place, you really need to focus on doing things consistently. So that doesn't mean you have to do all of the things at once at the same time, but you need to choose which things are most important, that has most impact up front right now, and do those consistently. Repeat it and evaluate it, tweak it, and then enhance it further. So with that said, I would like to pause for a minute and actually take any questions if I have any at this time.
Thank you, Rokas. That was awesome. I always enjoy listening to you and gain a lot of valuable information from your discussions. I really appreciate it. I think we've got time for just one question here. So if you could just answer this a little bit, how long does a process like this normally take? Are we talking months, years, decades?
All of the above. So the true answer to that question is that really we need to define the scope of what we're trying to do in here. And our recommendation is always to approach business process optimization as ongoing process. The simple process can be implemented 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days, but it doesn't mean that it has to stop in there. As I said, the recommendation is make sure we can crawl, then we can walk, then we can actually start running.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So now I would like to turn it over to Tom Brown, our partner from Scribe, and ask him to talk a little bit about the tools that Scribe has. You heard Rokas talk about those throughout his presentation. Now Tom will focus a little bit more on what they have to offer in this process, and I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Richard and Rokas. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Brown, part of the sales engineering team here at Scribe, a trusted integration provider for integration front and back office applications for almost 20 years. We do this by offering two products. We have an on-premise Insight product that connects to Dynamics products, Salesforce, XML, text files, and web services. And then we also have a cloud offering that is called Scribe Online that connects to over 40 applications, including marketing automation. What Rokas was talking about and showing you in some of his presentation there was can definitely look scary, but it's obviously necessary, and all of that needs to be thought of and broken down before you can put these kind of things in place. So what we do is Scribe partners with TurnKey to offer visual drag and drop solutions that can simplify your integrations. So we use our tools internally, and we've actually discovered over the years ago that when we implemented this kind of thing internally, we were able to put 40 hours back into our accounting back office department by implementing GP and CRM integrations for orders, quotes, and products like Rokas was talking about, and it reduced a lot of manual entry into multiple systems. So TurnKey's also been able to implement our Insight product with customers to pull orders from a company website or a web portal utilizing web services and bringing that data to CRM so the order can be edited and confirmed, then sent to your ERP like GP or AX for fulfillment purposes. So this streamlines the process internally for the company and also externally for the customer. So on the next slide, I wanted to show you a little bit about how Scribe comes at these type of projects. So we think about it, our current approach, what is your current approach to integration? When implementing an integration, do you think about the full integration lifecycle? What happens if the business rules for the integration changes or the designer of that integration that you put in place years ago has moved to another part of the business? Or an application has updates or passwords changed. Like, how is that currently handled within your company? So Scribe's approach is by taking a look at integration with that entire life cycle in mind. So if you can see on my slide here, on about 3 o'clock there where it says design. So we look at the design piece. So by using our connectors or adapters into these different applications like GP and AX and CRM, we're accessing the business rules of the application. So we're actually like going right in, and when we're pulling data from CRM to say GP, we can see that, if that GP customer is on credit hold, we understand that. We can see that because we're accessing those business layers instead of just pulling raw data from a flat file or something like that. And also we're using like a simple visual drag and drop design that reduces development and setup costs. So we're really simplifying that integration for you. And with our products, we also have a lot of common use cases. So we have pre-built integrations that you can use as a starting point. So that really cuts down on your ROI. If you go down to that next step, that development piece, it's about 5 o'clock there on that diagram. Our product also requires you not to have to do any coding. So there's no coding needed, and also there's we have a lot of self-documentation built within the product. So wherever you are, you can actually put in notes or descriptions of whatever you're doing. That's very helpful just because of what I mentioned before. So what happens if the person or team that built the integration originally is no longer involved, and you need to go back and someone needs to pick up where that integration was left off. Something changes, you have to go in there and figure out, why certain pieces were put in play. This self-documentation can help you do that. It makes it really easy for someone to pick up where left off or make a change that might be necessary. And also, it's all done through a drag and drop type. Our maps are all done with drag and drop. So you don't need to know all the ins and outs of all of the products to be able to make this happen. Someone in marketing or someone in sales with a little bit of knowledge of the products can actually do this without having to be, an expert on all the products to put this together. And the next piece there is that deployment piece around 7 o'clock. So we actually have the ability to, with our different products, be able to have cloud, on-premise, and hybrid type of deployments, and that makes it easy. So we can really put something into place in any type of situation. So we can also build something in a test type environment and then move that over to production. So that's another thing that's nice. You can build everything and test it out, and then once you're ready, move it into production without having to rebuild that or do any type of coding. We also have a lot of managed and unmanaged packages, so that you can actually help put this stuff together in a simple format and deploy it easily. Then up there at about 10 o'clock, there is the run part of my diagram. So this product is very scalable, it's very flexible, and it's also collaborative. We have great collaborative integration management console. So you can actually go into the console and see how the health of your integration, what's going on, when are they running. All of that can be done through a very user-friendly interface. We also have a multi-tenant type situation where you can go into these integrations and invite other users to be able to see them and help with your integrations. And it's a very agile provisioning situation too. That commercial piece. So I really just wanted to touch on that very briefly, and the fact that the way our products are set up is they're all you're creating a map or you're creating your integrations. These are all exportable and importable. So the ease of use makes this solution it can really make these complex integrations much easier to work with and repeatable for other parts of the business and other use cases. So really to go back on some of the things that Roke talked about, we can really implement a product like Scribe to be able to help out with those integrations, and TurnKey and Scribe partner together with a lot of these integrations to make some of that stuff that Roke has talked a little bit easier to get your hands around and a little bit easier to put together.
Tom Roke is here. I would like to add one more additional comment in here on the terms of the commercial component that you just talked about. All of the things and all of the examples I have talked about teaches us as an organization a lot of different valuable lessons. And what we like to do is offer those lessons to our new customers, existing customers who actually wants to jump on that optimization route. So with that said, typically what we have is once we develop a solution, once we deploy certain things, we actually take the components that we have developed that were custom and so forth, and we actually reuse them across different organizations. So if we talk about PO integration and we have enhanced PO integration components, we will typically implement those as a value-added integration points for the new customers who actually are implementing integrations. So I just want to mention that from what you're saying is very true, because we do use that. We reutilize the things that we have learned, because I think that is a huge value added for the companies, for organizations, because they don't have to go and learn the things from scratch. They can actually reuse pieces of components that have already been used in production environments.
Yeah, and that really pulls back together that entire integration life cycle. Like you said, you come up with specific use cases that make sense, and as time goes on, some of those change. And the nice thing about Scribe is once those changes happen, they're very easy to go in and make minor adjustments to different things. So that this can always be an ongoing process, and it needs to be thought of as an ongoing process. You don't put something in place and have it run consistently. There's always some things that need to be changed, and that's the nice part about Scribe is we have we do that on our end when there's updates to APIs and things like that. If you're using our Scribe Online product, all that's taken care of on our end. So so you can really have a very good ROI, because that extending 6 months, a year, 3 years down the road, it's a little bit easier to make changes or adjustments to our piece.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate your insights and your time today as part of this webinar. It's been very informative, very insightful. Thank you, Rokas, for your time. I don't have any questions lined up right now, so we're kind of running out of time here, so just want to be respectful of everybody's time. We are here to help. We've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. We have great partners like Scribe and Tom to assist us. If you're interested in a business process review, please send us a note, give us a call. We've got a lot of information, a lot of resources on our website. There's some free training resources out there. We're planning on a second series of webinar for June 23rd as a follow-up to this one. We'll be sending out email notifications for that. I did mention our user groups. We actually have a GP user group June 17th that's scheduled here in our St. Louis office, and then our next CRM user group is scheduled for July 30th. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope everybody has a great end of the week, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.